So last week I put up a video asking if you'd be interested in having a discussion about bringing, therapy and fitness kind of together, more in alignment, maybe more collaboratively. And what are some obstacles? What are some challenges? All of that bit. And the response was an overwhelmingly positive yes. I had a few really cool exchanges with people where some great questions were brought up. And I think that's the essence of this discussion. It's, hey, what are some questions that we have? And so I wanted to hop on and start to talk about it more. To be clear, these are my opinions. Yes, I'm a therapist, and yes, I have a extensive history in fitness and coaching people and training and all of that. But ultimately, like these are like my opinions. And yes, they're formed by experiences, but like this isn't dogma. This is a discussion. You're free. One of the beautiful things is you are free to agree, to disagree, to like, to dislike, all of that. So I just want to clear that first to set the stage of like, this isn't me telling you what to think or what to do or anything like that. So I think it's important first to look at, what are these terms? When we say therapy, when we say fitness, what do we mean by those without being overly redundant or definitive? But like, what does that mean? Because they're huge terms that don't mean the same thing to everybody. And to start, I think, we'll take therapy. Well, actually, therapy and fitness. They're both processes. They're not products. They are processes that we involve ourselves in. And a process is just like a way of doing something. One of the things that I had heard and have heard, and frankly also experienced personally, is like, therapy didn't work for me. I got nothing out of therapy. Therapy doesn't work for me. The gym is my therapy. Fitness is my therapy. I get where I for sure I get that. But when I hear that now, sitting here, when I hear that, I kind of like, I get a little sad inside, because it's like if someone were to come up to you and say, I don't eat steak. It's not for me. Don't like it. Did it once, not doing it again. You'd be like, what was this steak that you ate? Right? Like, what happened? Well, preparing a steak, the way in which you prepare a steak, there's not only one way to do it, unfortunately. Somebody's going to throw it on a propane grill for 30 minutes to make sure no E. coli gets in them. And you're like, oh my God, no, please don't ever think about that again. Versus somebody who's going to like reverse sear it or slow cook or whatever. My lack of chefing skills is showing, but you get the point. Cooking a steak is about a process. Yes, the outcome, the end result is either this, dog treat, piece of leather, baseball mitt, or one of the most memorable first bites you'll ever have. How was the thing prepared? What was the process of taking the steak and preparing it for consumption? Both of them, by the way, satisfy the intention of cooking, which is to make something edible. The human part, the experiential part, the interesting part, is that making it enjoyable, making it memorable, making it something that you eat once a year and you're like, that place, you remember it, right? That's the human part. But the process of cooking, really its fundamental intent is to just make something, prepare something that it can be eaten. That's kind of like fitness, actually. Like, fitness is, like, what is fitness? I used to give a seminar not the CrossFit seminars, but the between the year seminar, and I had this whole thing on like what is fitness, and I'll sum it down and say like I view fitness, the word fitness, the process of fitness, as a supporting element and a mechanism of action for a specific intent. That fitness depends on the task, the intent, or the action. The intent of preparing food is so that it can be safely eaten and digested and we can get nutrients from it. The intent of fitness is what, right? What do we have this fitness for? We're fit for what? In the military, someone who is not fit for duty or fit for leadership, right? The fitness is just that supporting element for the intention, but also like the mechanism of action that's going to allow that task to happen. So one of the things that it happens in therapy, like the process of becoming whole with oneself has been how therapy is sort of described. And I find that to be really beautiful, and I find that to be really true. Disconnecting from parts of ourselves or experiences that, or reconnecting with parts of ourselves, or reconnecting with ourselves that was disconnected through life's circumstances. Ultimately, kind of holding true in one's experience of living that this is me. And I'm not going to go into the whole like, well, is it me? Is it I? Is that ego? All of that stuff exists up here. It's not this is me. This is me, look at me. No, look at me is different than this is me. This is me is felt in ourself. The deepest sort of recesses of the miracle that we are. This is me. And the process to getting there is going to be very awakening, very enlightening, very difficult. Anybody who's done a hard workout before or has like had that therapeutic, enlightened situation from physical effort taps into that. This is me. Like there's like freedom in the acceptance and the embrace of within us is this boundless sense of strength, truth. And it's a really powerful experience. Again, how do we intentionally bring the two together? And again, it's not to say that they're at odds necessarily, but there's definitely some differences too, and there needs to be some differences. We can get into that in a future discussion. But ultimately, I think for purposes of today, like the bottom line is that we have to deal with things. We have to deal with things. We see that in therapy, and we see that in fitness. Avoidance exists in both the gym and the counseling office, though. And we oftentimes avoid the very things we need to feel and to deal with and to acknowledge because doing so doesn't feel so good. That also sounds like doing some hard workout. Dealing with the discomfort of the present moment that comes with physiological expression. And of course, we can extrapolate that to life. We can extend it to life. But if you were to think about going to therapy every day to deal with your stuff every single day, it kind of begs the question, like, why do you have to go every single day? Are you really dealing with it, or are we coping with it? Going to the gym, going super hard every single day. Are we really dealing with it? Or are we just going what we think is hard to actually not deal with it, to actually avoid and distract ourselves from it being a source of discomfort in our life? There's a time and a place. There's a time and a place for avoidance. There's a time and a place for disconnecting. And the time is when is when that moment is perceived as being too much, overwhelming. Again, it's not about you being a bad person if you avoid something. It's just about having an honest look at being aware of something, or subconsciously trying to not become aware of something so that we don't have to deal with it. And both of those exist in the gym. Both of those exist in therapy. Awareness without action can lead to anxiety. Okay. But anxiety-driven actions don't alleviate anxiety. What do I mean by that? Let's just say you're going on a trip tomorrow and you're having travel anxiety, and it is any number of worst case scenarios, from what's going to happen at home to what's going to happen at 30,000 feet in the air, are just front and center, just in your mind, in your body. You're feeling that thing. And the action then that the anxiety is sort of suggesting is that you're not safe. Don't travel. So you hop on the phone and you cancel your flight. Well, like, the anxiety goes away. You don't have to do the flight anymore. It should go away, right? That's not actually dealing with the cause of the anxiety. What anxiety-driven actions do is that they teach us a pattern of how to escape and avoid the unpleasant feeling that is accompanying the anxiety, the senses and the stories, not the cause and the source. And I'm not saying that that's an easy one. That is a very difficult one to deal with. Anybody who's ever been in that doom and gloom, just projection and worst case scenario catastrophizing knows, like, anything to make that shit end is better than that. But it's not. And that's where addictions come into play. Addictions come into play. They're really good at removing us from the felt experience of the unpleasant present. The reason why the phone, drugs, alcohol, pornography, work, money, or, like money making, gambling, the reason why those things are so powerful is because they work. Like, they work. They don't work for us. They might be celebrated in some circles, like the gym, like fitness, but they come at a cost. We pay the price. I say that they're celebrated in some circles because the felt experience of never being good enough unless you're better than everybody else is an incredibly powerful motivator for some. And it works sometimes. It works. But we don't see the fuel. We don't see the driving. We don't see the fitness, the mechanism of action, and the supporting element. We don't see the intent. We just see the product. We don't see the process. Yeah, we see what happened when someone did a series of, whatever their programming was. We just see the product. And we put the product up on the thing and say, yeah, great work. Celebrate it. Be more like this person. Be more like that person and be less like you. Disconnection. Disconnection leading to this is not me. That should be me. Well, it's not. It's never going to be. So it's not so simple as just saying, if I go to the gym and I improve my physical health, my mental health will improve. No, it's not guaranteed. If that was the case, why are so many athletes, so many, in every single sport, struggling with mental health? You could say physical resiliency, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations is what you need. Well, then why the fuck are so many veterans dying by suicide? Why are so many people who have had demonstrated careers of doing some of the hardest, most harrowing things, military, law enforcement, fire, pretty physically resilient people, dying by their own hand? Again, it's not so simple. And I wish I had an answer. I wish I had a singular answer. But singular answers don't solve systemic problems. And the systemic problem here, the system, is us individually and how we relate to and engage with our environment. And how the environment creates conditions for growth or not, or death. So there's like a lot wrapped up into this. To finish this thing off, I think it's important to look at acceptance as a practice. And I see that in therapy, and I see that in the gym. And the practice component of acceptance, I don't know, maybe this is just my own cynicisms over the years and the residual impact of them. But you hear acceptance. Like words like discipline get way more like rah-rah than acceptance. I get it. Acceptance has a softness to it. Acceptance has, for myself, it had quitting, giving in, surrendering, things you would never do. You learn the hard way. Acceptance as a practice to not avoid what needs to be faced. And that happens in the simplest of terms, insofar as sitting and being with your experience. That happens here. That happens in the gym. It can happen. It's not easy, but it can happen. So acceptance as a practice happens every day in here. Happens every day between the ears. That is like maybe a great starting point. Can we accept and action today? Can we accept an action today Can we accept and action that today I will not distract, I will not escape, I will not avoid the unpleasantness that comes from facing the things we need to face, to feel, and to deal with in order to become whole, in order to connect to this beautiful state, which is this is me. That's what I have for today.